Welcome to Life and Liberty Radio with David Householder. I'm Josh Jose, and together, you and I are taking another step toward freedom, both spiritual and political. So get comfortable, breathe in, and ignite your imagination. Envision a society that is spiritually deep and truly free. It's easy if you try.
Today I'm going to talk about the very central legal and criminal issue, and that has to be coercion. We've made our laws way too complicated. We've made laws that have nothing to do with what laws are supposed to be. Laws are supposed to protect us from coercion because deep inside we are free. Our minds are free. We can think whatever we want to think. Nobody can make us think anything unless, of course, they torture us or brainwash us, of course, which is an act which is inappropriate because it is coercion, it is aggression. The whole idea of a free society, everything rises or falls on whether or not we protect adults from coercion. And we're talking about adults here because we need to coerce children. We need to tell them, do not touch the stove, and we don't want to reason with a 2-year-old if he's running out into a crowded freeway. We use force with children to protect them, but as they grow up, we loosen the apron strings and let them have some freedom, and we hope that they will at some point live in total freedom. Because the truth is, our minds are free. The Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson said that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And inalienable means they were not given to us by the government or this piece of paper or a majority vote. They were given to us by the Creator. They are the created order, the natural order, because nobody can coerce your thinking. So really, any laws that don't have anything to do with coercion shouldn't be on the books. The only time we should use a law is to stop people from coercing each other, from aggressing on each other, from initiating aggression. So we don't want people to steal each other's property, take it by force, that's an act of aggression, or to use force, physical force, against another human being. We only use physical force against another human being. We need a militia, we need the police for that, to stop people from stealing people's things and hurting other people or forcing them to do things. The basis of a free society is simply free adults, able to do what they want as long as they're not coercing other people. Law is so simple. We've made it so complicated. The U.S. Code is so gigantic, I can't even remember the numbers of volumes when it comes out on its cyclical regular basis. And it regulates everything from what we call pickles to whatever. It's ridiculous. Our legal system has gotten so far away from its basic purpose. And its basic purpose is only to protect us from aggression and from coercion. So let's look at coercion. Coercion is initiated or threatened force. It can be called extortion, blackmail, torture, or the IRS, as we're going through all the kinds of scandals they're going through right now here in 2013. And to coerce money away from people is ridiculous. I pastor a church, and I don't force people to give money. People give voluntarily. We take an offering, and it goes pretty well. Ushers bring plates around, and people give voluntarily. But I wouldn't dream of forcing people to give money, taking their wallets out and emptying them, or telling them how much they have to pay. Everybody said that would be terrible to coerce church members. And I agree, it would be. We want to persuade them that this is a good idea, that this is a good cause, that they should give to it. So why is it okay for the government to come right in and say, we're going to take this amount? Imagine, if you would, a government that was there because of the voluntary or financed by the voluntary contributions of citizens. And if they couldn't persuade people to give voluntarily, there wouldn't be a government, or they wouldn't be able to do certain things. Can you imagine wars if we lived in a truly free society? If people didn't want to go They wouldn't go. Now, if I got drafted when I was younger, too old to get drafted now, I don't think they'd want me, but if I were drafted when I was younger, I would go, because I don't think it'd be fair to not to go if other people were forced to go, and sort of generational solidarity, you just go, and because you love your country, you'd go. But deep down inside, a draft is wrong. It's involuntary servitude, and the 13th Amendment, made famous by the Lincoln movie, was the one that negated involuntary servitude or slavery, and where we cheer that, hey, we finally made that step into a freer society by liberating the slaves in the slave states. But wouldn't that apply also to the draft? Woodrow Wilson wanted so badly to get into World War I. And I do believe, and if you want to go ahead and search on my website for Woodrow Wilson, you can find that I have written several times that I think he's the worst president ever because he initiated so much coercion, including the national draft for World War I. Why did he do a draft for World War I? Because nobody wanted to go. Nobody wanted to go. He was able to twist the arm of Congress and get a declaration of war. And he called up 1 million or 2 million troops, and only 70,000 showed up. So he was stuck with a problem. How do I get an army big enough to go over there and fight in Europe, which nobody wanted to go do? And we had no dog in that fight. It was democracies in Europe fighting democracies in Europe. And so, what's that about? Why should we pick sides? Why would we pick the British side as opposed to the German side? It's ridiculous. So most Americans saw through that, didn't want to go. It's not our fight. This is not our war. We're not being threatened. And so they needed to institute the draft. And drafts show up when wars are unpopular. Wars are unpopular because people don't want to go. They don't believe it's in our national best interest. When people attack our country, it shouldn't be necessary to have a draft. If someone were to attack my homeland, the area where I live, I would show up and use force to repel it. Now, that's not coercion. That's not aggression. That is repelling coercion and aggression. That's why we have police. That's why we have militias, to repel aggression. And that's why we have a Second Amendment, where people have the right to arm themselves to repel aggression against themselves by criminals and by a tyrannical government, if that were to be the case. And so coercion is the central crime. Extortion, blackmail, torture. It's called a duress crime by the legal profession, and it's forcing someone to act against his or her own best interest or will, and it's often used by our government to push a plea bargain, and harsh methods are often used for that. The Ten Commandments were put together basically to keep aggression from happening. And the Ten Commandments were brilliant from over 3,000 years ago. We have Moses giving these to the people, and those of us who are Christians and Jews and Muslims believe that he got them from God, and I think he probably did because they're so brilliant. And they are the blueprint for a free society. If you look at the Ten Commandments, basically is you honor the creation, you honor God, you honor your parents, you don't make fun of the creation. In other words, you work with whatever it is that brought this world into existence. You don't work against it. And you listen to your parents because they've got wisdom, and kids need that. As they grow up, they need a little bit of coercion. And then it goes on basically to say, don't kill, don't steal, tell the truth in court, don't covet your neighbor's things because that leads to property crime and coercion and aggression and all of those things, and keep to yourself and don't take someone else's spouse or cattle or house or anything. It's just leave each other alone. And this has been the cornerstone for human society. And the Ten Commandments were taught freely in public schools in the United States till the early 60s. We took them out, and the crime rate spiked by the mid-70s, went straight up till we finally were able to get a handle on it. Like a fire, we had to get under control. And now it's back under control, but nowhere near as good as it was before that. We think the Ten Commandments are religious. They're really not. They are really the blueprint of a free society. So coercion can be predatory. It can be pedagogic. In other words, we teach people in such a way that we coerce them to think certain ways. It can be ideological, and the PC people are definitely ostracizing people who don't think the way they think. They call it a hate crime if you disagree with them. And it also happens sometimes in the military, where people are forced into altruistic behavior and bravery for the sake of the group. Now, I think it's great if people choose to do that. The Bible says that greater love hath no one than to lay down your life for someone else. But that has to be accepted ahead of time. And generally, when people volunteer for the military, they are accepting this ahead of time. So that's less ambiguous. That's probably okay ethically. So coercion is wrong in itself, not just because it hurts people. Its first cousin, of course, is aggression, which is forceful, hostile, attacking, and it's wrong when it's initiated. And I think it's wrong also, according to Christian teachings, as a retaliatory thing. I don't think we should use aggression to retaliate against someone else, but I do believe you can use aggression and coercion or force to stop an attack. I do believe that. If the enemy's coming over the hill, you have every right to stop them from aggressing against people's property and their persons. And so if a woman's being beat up across the street, you should run over there and stop it. On the other hand, someone who's committed a crime, you don't blow up their house afterwards, a couple weeks later, as retaliation. And we all know how badly that works in the Middle East. So forceful initiated aggression, I think, is bad, and retaliation is bad. But I think that we do have a right to use physical force and aggressive behavior to stop aggression. And just imagine a world where there were no draft and there was no imperial aggression and all those things, and we would be a whole lot safer. Sure, we'd still have violence, and we wouldn't have a perfect world, but I think it would be a lot better than the one we have right now. So think about that. Think about coercion, just as a thought experiment, as the central crime. What if we took away everything on the books that had anything to do with anything other than stopping people from coercing each other? That was the vision of the founders, that people would have total freedom, but that freedom would end at the nose of your neighbor. So the minute we start to affect them, we got to cut it out. You know, you can play your music as loud as you want, but if you keep your neighbors up all night, that's not okay. That's an act of audio aggression against other people. People should be able to sleep in peace at night, and they shouldn't have to listen to your music just because you turn it up. So let's look at that. And to stop someone on the highway and to do a breathalyzer test when they haven't done anything it seems to me the height of aggression and coercion, stopping them and saying, hey, I'm armed, you're not. You need to stop right now, and you need to blow into this tube, or maybe I'll take your blood or a DNA sample or something like that. And to tell people they have to do that is crazy. And our taxation system has gotten out of control, and we all know that as we're looking at the whole IRS scandal here, where people were using audits and those kinds of things for coercive purposes. So when the government starts to coerce people who aren't doing anything wrong, we've got tyranny, and we need to fight back. The best way to fight back, I don't think, is through war or blowing things up. I think the best way to fight back is persuasion, because the truth always wins out, especially when people speak it. If there's a handful of people speaking against several hundred people, and the handful of people have the truth, hey, that idea is too big to fail. And the truth is, if we want to live in a society together, we have to avoid coercion, which is, of course, the central crime.
So put some sunshine and water on these fresh ideas and keep taking that next step toward freedom. Join us every weekday for the latest life and liberty ideas. The views expressed on this program are purely those of the presenter, and not necessarily those of the advertisers or organizations or persons with which the presenter has a relationship. Please click on the Amazon banner at the top of the Life and Liberty page, and consider doing all your online shopping through this portal. See you tomorrow.